What's up, Pokemon fans, and welcome back to another video. Not long ago, I had my mom come visit me, and while she was around, we got to talking about Pokemon. Yeah, I discussed Pokemon with my mom. And she asked me how Bulbasaur and Venusaur were related, which got us talking about Pokemon and their evolutions. Now, despite the fact that I play a lot of Pokemon, my mom knows next to nothing about it besides what Bulbasaur is. So, for the most part, my mom was able to understand and put together what Pokemon evolved into what, because for the most part, they looked like larger, less cute versions of the original, or shared enough common traits with each other that it made sense for some other reason. But there were a few that had her wondering, how does this Pokemon evolve into this? Which, of course, got me thinking about Pokemon whose evolutions look super odd. Today we're going to dive into 5 Pokemon with strange evolutions, and hopefully learn a little bit about why they evolved that way. This video is meant to be just a bit of fun, looking at some theories and myths surrounding Pokemon, so let's hop into it. Now, starting off with this classic Kanto Pokemon, we have Magikarp, who evolves into Gyarados. And let's face it, if you only had a less than base knowledge of Pokemon, this evolution would probably throw you for a loop too. How does this tiny little goldfish evolve into a massive looking dragon thing? I mean, there are a ton of other fish Pokemon that evolve into bigger fish, so why is Magikarp so special? But there's actually a reason for this. Magikarp and Gyarados are based off a Chinese legend. Now, according to the legend, if one pathetic carp could jump over a waterfall called the Dragon's Gate, it would be transformed into a dragon, and when it succeeded, the summer rains would start to fall. I personally think it's super cool when Pokemon goes out of its way to incorporate legends and stories into its games. Remoraid's a pretty standard looking Pokemon, and in fact, I had forgotten it existed for the longest time. However, recently this Pokemon has stood out to me for its rather strange evolution. Yes, I know this is another fish, but seriously, have you seen its evolution? This tiny little unassuming fish evolves into a freaking octopus. Now, on the surface at least, there's nothing in common between these two Pokemon, other than the fact that they both boast a water typing. But hey, so do Horsey and Greninja, and they're definitely not related. But there's a pretty interesting explanation behind this. Remoraid itself is based off an archerfish, which actually shoot water at bugs in order to catch them for a tasty meal. And it's also kind of shaped like a revolver and gets access to the sniper ability. Okay, so if Remoraid is a gun, that doesn't explain why it evolves into Octillery. Well, take a look at this. It's a pretty nice looking cannon, am I right? Now, let's take a look at Octillery. Yes, Octillery is based off a cannon. So, I know at least one person out there is thinking, well dang, a gun evolving into a cannon seems like a bit of a downgrade. But let's take a look back to the time when a cannon was still used. Back then, a cannon was a much more powerful weapon than a revolver. Compared to our modern day weapons, it wouldn't hold up as much, but back then, if you wanted to have the biggest, baddest weapon you could, you brought a cannon. Or in this case, an Octillery. Now, I always thought that Snorunt evolving into Glalie was a bit of a stretch, but I was willing to let it slide. I mean, Snorunt is the Snow Hat Pokemon, and Glalie is the Face Pokemon, so I guess in a really roundabout way they go together. But Snorunt to Frostlass always looked a bit strange. Even stranger that only female Snowrunts can evolve into Frostlass, and that's only with the use of a Dawnstone. But fear not, Pokemon fans, there's a reason behind this one too. And much like Magikarp from earlier, it's based in legend, the legend of Yukki-Onna. Now there are dozens upon dozens of different tales and stories involving her, and I'll leave a link to them in the description. But in this case, it seems like Pokemon took a little bit from all of them to create Frostlass. In some tales, she is a woman who was trapped in a snowstorm and died, thus becoming the first Yukki-Onna, which means Snow Woman. In other tales, she is a murderous spirit who kills all she meets, and in some she's even a loving wife and mother. But the tales all have one thing in common. Yukki-Onna is always female, and is always described as a spirit or ghost. So, maybe Snorunt represents the woman who climbed the mountain to become trapped by the snow, and Frostlass is the rebirth into Yukki-Onna. Alright, so take a look at these evolutionary lines. They look pretty standard, right? They certainly follow the trend of resembling each other through its evolutions. But what if we just swap them up? Yep, Shelmet, the small armored Pokemon, evolves into a Pokemon with 0 armor and a scary speed stat, and Karrablast evolves into a jousting knight. This is definitely a little strange and warrants a little bit of investigation. So first off, let's take a look at Karrablast, who is based off a Japanese rhinoceros beetle as well as a Japanese snail-eating beetle. Karrablast definitely got the cute treatment here. So naturally, what would a Karrablast eat in the wild? Snails, of course. And what is Shelmet based off of? A snail and a nautilus. So now that we know what they're based off of and why it would seem likely that Karrablast would win in a fight, but let's not forget that Shelmet has that beautiful armor. Well, if we take a look at their Pokedex entries, it explains this a little bit more. Both of the Dex entries speak about an electrical energy produced when these two Pokemon share a space together, which causes them to evolve. According to the Pokedex, the reason is still unknown, but the most popular fan theory is that when you go to trade a Shelmet for a Karrablast, the energy produced by these two Pokemon causes Shelmet's armor to become fused to Karrablast, while Shelmet, now left without its armor, is forced to adapt to life without its shell, and it adjusts by becoming fast enough to evolve the newly evolved Escavalier. Alright, let's take a look at the final Pokemon on this list. Now, this one is purely fan theory, and there really isn't any evidence from Pokemon or Game Freak to back this one up, yet it's still a theory that fascinates me, and one that we're diving all the way into the ocean for on this one. Literally diving, because we're looking at the deep sea Pokemon Clamperl and its two evolutions, Gorebyss and Huntail. Starting it off with just a cursory glance, while I can see a small resemblance between Gorebyss and Huntail, not so much in a family way but more in a rival way, I cannot see the family line between either them and Clamperl, and yet Clamperl evolves into them both. So how does Clamperl evolve into these two fish? Well, holding either a deep sea tooth or a deep sea scale. Now, according to this fan theory, if Clamperl evolves while holding the deep sea scale, it gets its evolutionary traits from the pearl which is inside of it, and that pearl is full of psychic type energy. And there's a little bit to support this. Gorebyss learns a surprising amount of psychic type moves, and in Pokemon Ranger, its Pokemon Assist move typing is psychic. It also boosts a higher special attack and a special move pool. Now what about Huntail? The theory explains that if Clamperl evolves from Huntail, it takes on the traits of the darker, harder shell of its body. So what supports this? Well, it's a physical attacker with a majority move pool of hard-hitting physical attacks, and it also learns a fair amount of dark-type moves, the exact opposite of Gorebyss. In Pokemon Ranger, its Pokemon Assist type is also dark as well. What do you guys think of this theory? Do you agree with it or think it's a little bit far-fetched? I'll leave a link to the original theory in the description below. So before we end off this video, let's take a look at some of the honorable mentions that didn't quite make it onto this list. There were a fair few I would have loved to have added, but simply couldn't find enough facts or theories behind them to include them here.
No, 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 no.
And that's it, 5 Pokemon with strange evolutions. What did you guys think of the explanation for these Pokemon? And are there any Pokemon with strange evolutions that you like? Don't forget, if you like this video, you can always leave a like on it, and if you're interested in even more top 10s, 5s, and any other Pokemon content, you can always click that subscribe button. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you over on the next video.